It's perfectly okay to want something. We all want things: success, love, recognition, comfort. Wanting is human. Wanting gives us direction, motivation, purpose. But there's a quiet shift that happens when a want becomes a need. And that shift can change everything. Because the moment you feel like you need something to feel whole, you've handed over your power. You're no longer just reaching for something, you're leaning on it to survive. And that changes the relationship entirely. So let me ask you, what happens when the things you want start to define who you are? What happens when you don't just want love, you need it to feel valuable? When you don't just want success, you need it to feel worthy? What happens when attention, validation, praise become the only things keeping your self-esteem from collapsing? Most people don't even realize it's happening. They tell themselves they're just ambitious, just driven, just passionate. But underneath that drive, for many, is something much more fragile, a fear that without these things, they'll feel like nothing at all. We live in a world that celebrates desire, bigger dreams, bigger goals, bigger lives. And there's nothing wrong with that, until we begin tying our identity to what we're chasing, until we can no longer tell where the desire ends and the dependency begins. And when that line gets blurry, we lose ourselves. We start building a version of ourselves based on what we can get, not who we really are. We become attached, addicted, controlled. This isn't just about material things. It's about anything that starts to hold too much weight in your life. That relationship you think you can't live without. That job title that makes you feel seen. That lifestyle that you're afraid to lose. None of those things are bad. But when you need them in order to feel okay, you've put them in a position they were never meant to hold. You've made them the source of your worth. And that's dangerous, because anything outside of you can be taken from you. So this is where the shift begins. It starts with awareness. It starts with asking the hard question. What in my life do I want so badly that I've started to need it just to feel like enough? What am I gripping so tightly that the thought of losing it makes me panic? And what would it mean for my peace, my confidence, my self-worth if I loosen that grip just a little? This isn't about letting go of your dreams. It's about letting go of the illusion that you are your dreams. It's not about becoming indifferent. It's about becoming independent. It's the difference between holding something with appreciation and clinging to it out of fear. Because the moment you let go of needing it, you become free. Free to pursue it without pressure. Free to enjoy it without fear. Free to be yourself, with or without it. So take a breath, look around your life and ask yourself, am I wanting this from a place of strength, or am I needing it from a place of fear? That one question can change everything. Because when you move from needing to wanting, you don't lose power. You take it back. Let's take a moment to define something that most of us rarely think about, but that quietly shapes the way we live, love, and work. The difference between wanting something and needing it. This distinction may sound small, but emotionally and psychologically, it's everything. It's the line between strength and struggle, freedom and fear, fulfillment and frustration. And if you don't know where that line is in your life, it's easy to cross it without even realizing. Think of it this way. Oxygen is a need. You can't survive without it. Food, water, sleep, these are biological needs. Your body literally shuts down without them. But what about that expensive car? That job title? That relationship? Those things might feel essential, but they're not. They're wants. They're preferences. They may add comfort or joy or meaning, but they're not required for your survival. And knowing the difference could save your peace of mind. Because the moment something moves from a healthy preference to an emotional requirement, you're not choosing it anymore. It's choosing you. Let's use another example. Style is a want. You might love the way a certain outfit makes you feel. You might enjoy the way people respond to your appearance. That's normal. That's human. But when you start needing that style, that brand, that look just to feel good enough, just to feel like you matter, you've stepped into dangerous territory. You've handed your self-worth over to something that can't hold it. Here's how you can spot the difference. When you want something, it enhances your life, but it doesn't define you. You can enjoy it, pursue it, even work hard for it, but you're okay without it. You have peace with or without it. That's a healthy desire. But when you need something, Your sense of self starts to depend on it. You feel anxious without it. You question your value without it. You feel small, invisible, or incomplete. That's emotional dependency, and it puts your well-being in the hands of something you don't control. This can show up in all areas of life. In relationships, it looks like needing constant reassurance or validation. Wanting to be loved is healthy. Needing to be loved in order to feel whole is not. In your career, it might be the drive to succeed. Ambition is good. But if your self-worth crumbles when you don't get the promotion, or if your identity collapses when you're no longer the best, you've crossed the line into emotional need. In social settings, it could be craving attention or approval. Enjoying compliments is fine. But if silence makes you feel invisible, if disagreement feels like rejection, you've given too much power to others' opinions. Here's the truth. The things we want can motivate us, but the things we think we need can control us. And the most dangerous needs are the ones we create in our own minds. We convince ourselves that we can't be happy unless we have the perfect partner, the perfect job, the perfect lifestyle. But happiness doesn't come from perfect conditions. It comes from internal clarity, from knowing who you are, what matters to you, and what you're willing to live without. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about raising your self-awareness. It's not about denying your desires. It's about making sure they don't define you. Wanting is powerful when it's rooted in choice. Needing becomes dangerous when it's rooted in fear. So the question is, are your goals driven by passion or pressure? Are your relationships built on love or fear of being alone? Are your dreams yours, or are they trying to fill a gap you haven't yet named? Once you start asking these questions, everything shifts. You begin to see clearly. You begin to separate who you are from what you chase. And that separation is where peace lives. That's where true confidence grows. Not in having everything, but in knowing that you'll be okay even if you don't. Because when you stop needing, you start choosing. You start showing up from a place of strength, not scarcity. And that changes everything. So take a moment and look at your life. Ask yourself honestly, what do I truly need to be okay? And what have I convinced myself I can't live without, even though I could? That clarity is the beginning of emotional freedom. And once you have it, no success, no setback, no relationship, no rejection will ever own you again. You'll want things. You'll go after them. But you'll never let them define your worth. And that's what real freedom feels like. Let me tell you a story. It's about a man and his watch. At first, it was just a beautiful timepiece, sleek, expensive, elegant. A reward to himself for years of hard work. He wore it proudly, not to show off, but because it meant something. It reminded him of what he'd overcome, the goals he'd achieved, the man he was becoming. And in the beginning, that watch was just that, an accessory, a symbol, nothing more. But over time, something subtle started to shift. He wouldn't leave the house without it. He started checking his wrist even when he wasn't checking the time. When someone complimented it, he felt a small surge of pride. Not about the watch itself, but about what it said about him. He started to associate it with his image, his identity, his worth. And one day, without even realizing it, the watch stopped being just something he wore. It became something he leaned on. Imagine being in his shoes. You show up to a meeting and realize you forgot your watch. Suddenly, you feel off, underprepared, incomplete. You catch yourself adjusting your sleeve like it's missing something. Not because you need to know the time, but because you need to feel like yourself again. That watch, once just a possession, has now become a piece of who you are. And without it, you feel smaller. Now stop and ask yourself, have you ever had something like that? Maybe it wasn't a watch. Maybe it was a brand, a car, a title, a certain look or reputation. Something that started as a choice, something you once enjoyed, but slowly became something you couldn't imagine being without. That's the danger. That's the trap. When we start attaching our identity to the things we own, we begin to lose the parts of ourselves that are supposed to be unshakable. The man didn't change, his values didn't change, but his sense of self began to depend on something outside of him. That's how easy it is. That's how quickly a passion becomes a prison. Not because the object has any real power, but because we give it power. We let it speak for us, stand for us, represent us. And without it, we feel exposed, vulnerable, incomplete. This happens more than we think. Someone gets a promotion and starts seeing themselves only through that role. Take it away and they feel lost. Someone builds their life around a relationship and forgets who they are without that other person. Someone builds their confidence on how they look, how they dress, what they drive. And when any of it is taken away, when the job ends, the relationship shifts, the car is gone, they crumble. Not because the loss was devastating, but because their identity was never truly their own. The lesson here isn't to stop enjoying things. It's to stop needing them. Wear the watch. Drive the car. Be proud of your work. But make sure that who you are doesn't disappear when those things do. Because the moment your confidence is tied to an accessory, your power becomes conditional. And real strength, the kind that lasts, is unconditional. So next time you catch yourself feeling dependent on something, ask yourself, if I didn't have this, would I still feel like me? Would I still walk into the room with my head high? Would I still believe I'm enough? If the answer is no, then it's time to untangle your identity from that object. Because you are not what you wear. You are not what you drive. You are not what people see. You are what you know to be true when everything external is stripped away. That man and his watch, he eventually realized what was happening. One day, he left it behind on purpose, walked out the door, wrist bare, heart pounding. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. He needed to prove to himself that he could still walk into the room, still speak with confidence, still be the man he was, without the watch to back him up. And when he did, something powerful happened. He didn't just take back his focus, he took back his freedom. And that's the invitation for you. Whatever your version of the watch is, name it, question it, step back from it. Because if you can learn to want something without needing it, you'll never be owned by it. And in a world where so much of our identity is wrapped in the things we display, that kind of freedom is rare and priceless. There's a danger most people never see coming. It doesn't scream. It doesn't arrive in chaos. It creeps in quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. And by the time you notice it, it's already taken hold of you. I'm talking about the danger of tying your identity to things outside of yourself. Objects, titles, achievements, image, even relationships. And once you do that, your sense of self becomes fragile, conditional, and easily shaken. If your identity is tied to something outside of you, what happens when it disappears? What happens when the job ends? When the relationship changes? When the status fades? What happens when the applause stops or the attention shifts? If you've built your self-worth around those things, you don't just lose the thing, you lose yourself. And that is the real danger. You feel strong when you have it, but without it, you feel small. You feel confident when it's going well. But when it's gone, you feel lost. That's how emotional instability begins. Not because life changes, but because you've allowed your value to be determined by something life can take away. And the moment your sense of identity rests in something that can be removed, your peace is always at risk. Let me put it plainly. You are not your title. You are not your relationship status. You are not your house, your income, your brand, or your follower count. Those things may reflect parts of your journey, but they are not the foundation of your worth. And if you don't separate who you are from what you have, you will always live in fear of losing it. Think about how often people introduce themselves with what they do, not who they are. I'm a doctor. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a mother. All of that is important. All of it can be meaningful, but none of it should carry your entire identity. Because when you pour all of yourself into one thing, you create a single point of failure. If that one thing breaks, you break with it. And this shows up everywhere. The person who only feels valuable when they're achieving something. The one who only feels lovable when they're in a relationship. The person who can't handle criticism because their entire self-worth is tied to being seen as successful. When your identity is external, every challenge feels personal. Every loss feels like a reflection of your value. Every mistake feels like an identity crisis. But your value doesn't disappear when your circumstances change. It doesn't shrink when you fail. It doesn't vanish when someone leaves. Your worth is not up for negotiation. It's not something the world gives you. It's something you have to claim from within. Because when your self-worth is internal, you become unshakable. You're still grounded when things fall apart. You're still enough when people don't applaud. You're still whole when you walk away from something that no longer fits. And that's the shift we all have to make at some point, moving from identity built on performance, possessions, or perception to identity built on truth, on character, on values, on the quiet, unchanging reality that you matter, even when the world isn't clapping. So take a look at your life. Ask yourself, what have I tied my identity to? What am I afraid to lose because I've convinced myself I can't be me without it? Those are your danger zones. Those are the places you need to strengthen from the inside out. Because freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. From knowing that even if the titles fall away, the roles shift, the image fades, you're still here, still worthy, still enough. The world will keep trying to define you by what you do and what you have. But your job is to remember who you are without all of it. That's where your real power lives, not in what people see, but in what can't be taken from you. And the sooner you stop tying your identity to things outside of yourself, the sooner you start living from a place of real peace. So let this be your reminder. The danger isn't losing the thing. The danger is losing yourself when it's gone. But the good news? You can take yourself back. You can untangle your worth from the world. And when you do, you don't just become more stable, you become more free. Let's take this conversation deeper. Because the idea of needing versus wanting doesn't just show up in small habits or material things. It shows up in the places that define our lives: love, work, identity. And when we don't understand the difference between healthy commitment and emotional dependency, we end up creating pressure, fear, and pain in the very areas that are meant to give us meaning. Let's start with love. There's a kind of love that's beautiful, supportive, nurturing, uplifting. And then there's a kind of love that quietly turns into survival. It starts with admiration, connection, attraction, but slowly it turns into something else. Something that says, I can't be okay unless you're here. That's not love anymore. That's emotional dependence. And while it may look romantic on the outside, on the inside, it's built on fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being unseen, fear of being unworthy without someone else's validation. They didn't fall in love, they fell into emotional survival mode. Every text becomes reassurance. Every silence feels like abandonment. The relationship becomes less about connection and more about control. You begin trying to manage the other person's behavior, not because you want to control them, but because you're terrified of what their absence might say about you. That's not partnership. That's panic dressed up as devotion, and it's unsustainable. You can love someone deeply without needing them to survive. You can share your life with someone and still be whole on your own. That's not detachment, it's maturity. It's the ability to hold space for love without making it the sole foundation of your self-worth. Because when love becomes need, it becomes fragile. Every argument feels like rejection. Every distance feels like a threat. And eventually, the weight of that need becomes too much for anyone to carry. Now let's talk about work. We live in a culture that glorifies productivity, that praises hustle, that celebrates the grind. And there's nothing wrong with working hard. There's beauty in being excellent at what you do. But when your entire identity becomes wrapped in your job, when who you are is completely defined by what you achieve, you've entered a different kind of dependency. One that doesn't get called out because it's masked as ambition. It starts with passion. You care about your work. You put in the hours. You chase growth. But over time, you stop knowing who you are outside of your role. You stop resting. You stop connecting. You stop listening to anything that doesn't sound like achievement. And one day, something breaks. A project fails. A promotion is passed over. You burn out. You crash. And suddenly, without the work, you don't know who you are. You can work hard without letting your job become your only identity. You can pursue success without letting failure define your value. Because work should be part of your purpose, not a substitute for your self-worth. When it becomes your whole world, the smallest disruption can shake you. And that's not stability. That's a trap. We see this often in midlife crises. The man who built his entire life around his title suddenly retires and falls into depression. The woman who poured every ounce of her identity into being the perfect partner or parent wakes up one day with no idea who she is now that the role has shifted. These moments are not just about age. They're about identity crisis. They're about realizing too late that what you were leaning on wasn't you. It was a version of you shaped by need. Dependency is love turned fragile and work turned toxic. It's when the very things that once inspired you start to own you. And the only way to free yourself is to start asking better questions. Am I doing this from a place of strength or fear? Am I here because I choose to be, or because I'm afraid of who I'd be without it? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are the beginning of freedom. The truth is, you can be deeply in love and still be emotionally independent. You can be wildly successful and still grounded in who you are apart from your work. That's what healthy identity looks like. It doesn't need constant validation to stand strong. It knows where it ends and where everything else begins. So if you find yourself overly anxious in relationships, constantly exhausted by work, or afraid to lose something because it feels like losing yourself, that's your signal. That's your invitation to step back, to breathe, to rebuild. Not to abandon what you care about, but to reclaim who you are beyond it. Because you are more than what you do. You are more than who loves you. And the moment you stop needing those things to survive, you can finally start living. Not from fear, but from fullness. Not from dependency, but from real lasting peace. There's a lot of misunderstanding around the word detachment. People hear it and assume it means coldness, indifference, or apathy. They imagine someone who doesn't feel, who doesn't care, who walks away too easily. But real detachment isn't about closing your heart. It's about strengthening it. It's not about giving up. It's about not giving in to what tries to own you. It's the quiet strength of someone who can love without losing themselves. Who can care deeply without collapsing when things don't go their way? Detachment is the art of staying grounded in a world that constantly tries to pull you off center. It's knowing how to hold things without clinging. How to appreciate what you have without needing it to define you. It's not that you don't feel. You feel everything, but you're not ruled by it. Your peace isn't at the mercy of someone else's behavior. Your self-worth doesn't rise and fall with your circumstances. You don't stop loving. You love wiser. You don't stop trying. You just stop tying your identity to the outcome. When you live with detachment, you stop needing everything to go your way in order to stay okay. You stop trying to control people, moments, and outcomes. You show up fully with your whole heart, but you don't let your whole life hinge on whether or not things unfold exactly as you imagined. That's not coldness. That's freedom. That's maturity. That's power. Too many people think strength means holding on tightly. But sometimes real strength is knowing when to let go, not to walk away, not to shut down, but to release the grip of attachment that turns love into possession, work into pressure, and ambition into anxiety. When you detach, you don't lose connection. You create space for healthier connection. You don't stop striving. You stop suffering over things you can't control. This mindset is the foundation of resilience. Because life won't always cooperate. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. You'll win, and you'll lose. And if your happiness depends on everything working out perfectly, you'll always be at the mercy of life's chaos. But when you develop the ability to stand in the storm without losing your center, to bend without breaking, to feel without falling apart, that's where true emotional strength begins. You don't have to stop caring to protect your peace. You just have to stop tying your peace to everything you care about. You don't have to stop loving to protect your heart. You just have to stop giving it away to things that weren't meant to carry its weight. Detachment doesn't mean you feel less. It means you choose what to feel more wisely. It means you stop investing energy into people and situations that drain you. It means you stay anchored no matter what life throws your way. This is especially important when it comes to relationships, goals, and dreams. Love with your whole heart, but don't lose yourself in the process. Chase your goals fiercely, but know who you are without them. Hold space for others, but don't carry what's not yours to carry. Detachment is the space between holding on and being held hostage. It's the clarity that reminds you, you can care and still walk away. You can try and still release. You can give your best and still let go of what's not meant for you. So when you practice detachment, you're not disconnecting from life. You're actually connecting to it more honestly. Without illusions, without control, without fear. You're finally seeing things as they are, not as your attachments wish they would be. And from that place, you begin to live with more freedom, more intention, and more peace. You don't need to stop feeling. You just need to stop letting those feelings control your direction. You don't need to stop wanting. You just need to stop believing you can't live without what you want. And when you do that, when you finally let go of the fear that's tied to holding on too tight, you find something better. You find clarity. You find peace. You find yourself. That is the strength of detachment. Not cold, not distant, but rooted, clear, unshakable. The kind of strength that allows you to move through life with a steady heart and an open hand. That's not weakness, that's mastery. And it's available to anyone willing to let go of what they don't control, so they can finally hold what truly matters. Let's talk about how to actually practice healthy detachment in real life. This isn't just a mindset, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained, one choice at a time. The goal isn't to become cold or disconnected. The goal is to build the kind of emotional independence that lets you stay grounded no matter what life throws your way. Because the truth is, no matter how much you understand something intellectually, nothing changes until you start practicing it. So, here's how you begin. Step 1, recognize your triggers. Start noticing where you feel overly attached. What in your life feels like it owns your mood, your confidence, your sense of identity? Is it your phone, a relationship, your performance at work, a certain object that you always wear or carry? Don't judge it, just observe it. Pay attention to what makes you feel uneasy when it's taken away or when it's not going perfectly. That uneasiness is your signal. It's showing you where you've placed too much weight on something external. Step 2, remove the emotional dependency. That doesn't mean getting rid of everything you care about. It means creating small, deliberate moments of separation to test your inner stability. Start by leaving the watch at home for one day. If you feel empty without it, lean into that discomfort. Let it teach you something. Let it show you where your identity might be too attached. If you always need validation from your partner to feel okay, take a day to be intentionally still within yourself. Practice affirming your own worth before you look for someone else to do it. If your job consumes your entire identity, schedule one evening a week that has nothing to do with achievement. Read, reflect, be. Remember that you are more than what you produce. Step 3, rebuild from the inside. This is where you create new habits that reinforce your internal strength. Journal regularly, meditate, write out the things you believe about yourself that have nothing to do with what you have or what you do. Say them out loud. Repeat them until they stick. Things like, I am enough as I am. My worth doesn't change based on who approves of me. I carry value even in quiet seasons. These are the beliefs that build real resilience, not because they sound good, but because they retrain your emotional foundation. And don't stop there. Practice presence, practice space. In love, make room for both closeness and distance. You don't need to text constantly to feel connected. You don't need to prove your worth to keep someone's attention. In work, take breaks without guilt. Step away from productivity to reconnect with who you are beyond what you do. The more you practice this, the more you'll notice something powerful happening. You'll stop feeling anxious when things don't go exactly your way. You'll stop panicking when the noise dies down. You'll start trusting yourself to hold steady, even when things around you shift. Another powerful practice is choosing discomfort on purpose. Do something small that stretches your emotional independence. Say no to something you would normally say yes to, just to avoid conflict. Sit in silence instead of filling the air with distractions. Let someone else be the center of attention and resist the urge to perform. These moments build emotional muscle. They teach you to breathe through what once made you feel uncertain. And over time, you'll begin to see. You were never lacking power. You just hadn't practiced using it yet. Detachment is not a one-time decision. It's a daily choice. A way of walking through life with open hands instead of clenched fists. A way of loving, working, striving without getting tangled up in fear. And the more you train this muscle, the more natural it becomes. You'll start to feel lighter, freer, more peaceful. You'll stop reacting out of need and start responding out of clarity. That's how you know you're growing. So today, take one small step. Pick one area where you feel overattached and give yourself permission to loosen the grip. It might be uncomfortable. That's okay. Sit with it, learn from it, use it. Because the discomfort isn't weakness, it's training. And every time you lean into it, you're teaching yourself how to be strong from the inside out. You don't need to detach from life. You just need to detach from the idea that anything outside of you gets to decide who you are. The more you practice, the more you realize your value isn't found in what you hold on to. It's found in what you can let go of and still stand strong. And that kind of strength, that's what changes everything. There is a kind of peace that comes when you no longer need anything outside of yourself to feel whole. A quiet confidence, a steady joy, a sense of grounded freedom that no circumstance can shake. It's not loud, it doesn't demand attention, but it changes everything about the way you move through life. Because the moment you stop needing is the moment you start breathing freely. You stop gripping so tightly. You stop chasing approval, status, perfection, and you begin to experience life as it is, not as something you constantly have to control or prove yourself through. When you need less, you begin to feel more. You notice beauty again, in small things, in slow moments, in people, in stillness. You stop measuring your worth by how others see you, by what you own, by what you've accomplished. You begin to feel light, because the emotional weight of always trying to earn your value starts to fall away. You realize that you were never meant to be defined by titles, achievements, or attention. You were meant to define yourself from the inside out, and that's the real gift. When you don't need anything to define you, you finally get to define yourself. You choose what matters to you. You decide what kind of life is meaningful. You build your world on clarity, not comparison. On purpose, not pressure. You stop waiting for permission to be happy. You stop holding your breath until something outside of you gives you the green light to feel worthy. You give that to yourself. This is what happens when you let go of the need to be constantly validated. You start to trust your own voice again. You listen to your own values. You act from strength, not survival. You love more freely because you're not afraid of losing yourself. You show up to work, not to prove your worth, but to contribute from a place of grounded self-respect. You walk into rooms with less fear because you're not trying to be someone. You're simply being yourself. And the people around you feel that shift. You become the kind of person who doesn't drain others with silent demands for reassurance, but instead brings calm, brings clarity, brings presence. Because you're not reaching for something to fill you up. You're bringing something whole to the table. That's what healthy strength looks like. That's what emotional maturity feels like. None of this means you stop having goals. It doesn't mean you stop loving or caring or wanting more. It just means you stop attaching your identity to those things. You stop needing them to be okay. And that's when you truly begin to enjoy them. When love is no longer about security, but about connection. When success is no longer about proving, but about creating. When freedom is no longer a distant dream, but a daily experience. So if you're tired of carrying the pressure to be enough, here's the truth. You already are. You've just forgotten. Or maybe you've been too busy needing things to remember, but now you can let that go. You can start to return to yourself, slowly, gently, one step at a time. And as you do, you'll begin to notice something powerful. The more you need less, the more life opens up. Not because you gave up on wanting more, but because you stopped letting your happiness depend on it. You stopped letting the world hold your joy hostage. This is your invitation to let go of what was never meant to carry your worth, to reclaim your attention, your peace, your power, to stop needing so much from the outside and start building everything from within. Because that's where the real treasure is. Not in what you collect, but in who you become when you no longer need anything to prove that you're already enough. From today, live by choice, not by craving. You can want it, enjoy it, love it. Just don't need it to be whole. That's the challenge, and also the freedom. This is your moment to take inventory of your life, not from a place of judgment, but from honesty. Ask yourself, what have I tied my identity to that doesn't deserve that power? What in my life do I lean on so heavily that without it, I feel lost? That's where you begin, because awareness is the first act of freedom. Let go, step back, choose peace, Not because you're giving up, but because you're ready to stop being emotionally ruled by things that were never meant to define you. You're ready to stop handing your self-worth to something temporary. Whether it's a person, a position, a possession, if it has the power to make or break your sense of value, it owns you. And this is the moment you take that ownership back. You don't have to overhaul everything overnight. Start small. One pattern, one belief, one situation. Let the watch stay home for a day. Say no to something you'd usually say yes to just out of fear. Take a break from performing and just be. Choose silence over scrolling. These little acts of detachment create the space you need to rediscover who you are without all the noise. You've spent enough time letting the world tell you who to be. Now it's time to tell yourself. You get to define your worth. You get to decide what stays and what goes. What you build on and what you release. That's power. And it's the kind of power that no title, relationship, or possession can give you, because it comes from within. So move forward with clarity. Live lighter. Need less. Not because you've given up on life, but because you've finally remembered how full life can be when you're not constantly chasing something to complete you. You already are complete. And the more you believe that, the more you'll start to live that way. Let this be your turning point. From now on, want things because they align with who you are, not because you're afraid of who you are without them. And if this message moved you, share it. Pass it on. Let someone else hear that they're already enough, too. And if you want more reminders like this, real, grounded, honest, make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you're choosing to let go of today. Because this isn't just about hearing something inspiring, it's about changing the way you show up in your life. One step, one choice, one truth at a time. And it starts right now. Live from want, not from need. That's where your peace begins.